My name's Mothiur. I'm a lawyer, and I had my revolution of thinking during the Occupy movement when I got really involved with Occupy and met Julie, and was why so many people have this longing in their hearts, and meeting that kind of different kinds of people set me on a journey of re-exploration of what I fundamentally believe, what do I stand for, and ended up helping the Scottish communities create a community charter to develop and work against and resist the coal bed methane happening there. But we've had a lot of information, and I just want to start also with a story, because I was just reading when I was at the Big Oak that Robin Hood the outlaw, which is interesting. The outlaw, what do we mean? Is outside the law. Whose law are we talking about, for one thing? And then somebody mentioned the trees and so on, and we have to think also about whose voice. Where do the trees come from? Their voice. And he also said there that the Robin Hood, the myth, is connected to this idea of the green man as well, the wild man of the forests. And I was just thinking back, what did the forests actually sound like hundreds and hundreds of years ago when that oak was a young oak, everything was all forested? And I was in Thailand, just in the forest, which is said to be as old as the Amazon in Khao Sat. And this is what I heard, and I just want to play it to you. And if you close, I invite you to close your eyes and just to think back to that time and to think, what were the sounds that one could hear? And this was heard there. So alive, so alive. And from that I wrote this poem. Mournful cries, low and sweet, fill the dusky air, here in this ancient jungle, still living its dream. Here the presence of the green man lives on, his roots tied and tangled to the presence of the earth, bursting from heart through nose, mouth and ears, holding solid his thoughts like roots to soil. Bring back the green man to our western shores. Let sky meet earth once more. For me, the image of the green man, and just connecting to that idea of Robin Hood and what you stand for here, bringing back the stories from that place and remembering our connection, or the connection to land. There's another story. I had a quote from here, Hamlet, 2 lines. Marcello, the warrior, the guard, he says when he sees the ghost of Hamlet's father, something is rotten in the state of Denmark. Horatio, heaven will direct it. Marcellus, nay, let's follow him. 2 things just to bring out from that. One is the state. He doesn't say the people of Denmark, he says something is rotten in the state of Denmark. The other is the authority. Where does authority come from? Horatio, heaven will direct it, the idea of authority above fate. Marcellus, nay, let's follow him, investigate, let's find out, self-agency. These are 2 ideas that I think are key to following what it is that we need to find out about the commons. And what we did in Falkirk, when people were asking, why isn't the law protecting us? I went up with a group of people to have these workshops where people were just asking basic questions like, what is it that we want for our grandchildren? What is the kind of future we want to envision? So it's kind of trying to create a positive image, a positive sense. What is our sanctuary here? And they came out with all these amazing ideas, and we kind of distilled it. And in that distillation, this was the declaration we came at the end, and I just want to read out the declaration. We, the people of, and talked about Falkirk there, but it could be another place, have produced this charter to set out the assets of our commons, to declare those commons our cultural heritage, to declare our basic rights and responsibilities. And it's important to remember the responsibilities for improving and safeguarding our commons into the future. We declare the assets of our commons to be the sum total of the local, tangible and intangible assets we have collectively agreed to be fundamental to the health and well-being of our present and future generations. These constitute a social and ecological fabric that sustains life and which provides us with the solid foundations for building and celebrating our homes, families, community and legacy within a healthy, diverse, beautiful and safe natural environment. And I thought that it was a powerful kind of statement that they came out with, and they then set out their assets. And because they owned that document, they were the ones who went to the councillors, went to a number of people to say this is what we believe in. It created for them a sense of their own identity that they'd in a sense lost. And what the legal argument in that case was, I was looking at the environment impact assessment. I was like, how can we bring the charter into a kind of legal setting? And notice that they said they have to create their baseline data, the project, what's the impact of the project on the soil, on the air, etc. And one of the things they have to assess is the cultural heritage. And the baseline data said there is no cultural heritage in this area, there are no national monuments, etc. And I was like, well, is that what cultural heritage actually is? Is it just the dead things, the artifacts left behind? Or is it a living quality that makes community feel alive? And then there was a European instrument, not actually in law, but it was defined cultural heritage as this. And it said it's a reflection and expression of one, constantly evolving values and beliefs, knowledge and traditions. So evolving values, beliefs, knowledge and traditions, and includes all aspects of the environment resulting from the interaction between people and places. And that's important as well. It's the interaction between people and their place that creates this sense of identity, of evolving values and traditions. And to me, that is the commons. That is one sense of what the commons actually is. On the other side, we have the state with their kind of social contract theory, etc. John Locke and Hobbes talking about the need for the state in order to get away from our lives, which are solitary, poor, nasty, brutish and short. But that isn't what the commons are actually showing. It was actually a rich environment in which to raise your children. So the need for the state is on one side, and at the other side we have this thing that we've lost. But the process that we had in Scotland, we had a public inquiry, and you know, the Falkirk community have got a whole load of information there about coal bed methane if you need to get any of sort of the witness statements, the evidence that they collected. But the timing was also that the referendum in Scotland was happening at the time. So when the Scottish ministers took the decision into their own hands because of the public outcry that was being built by the people, and it wasn't just about a legal case. It's about what the people did behind the scenes. They were the ones who were getting it adopted by their community councils, or what you'd call parish or town councils. Town councils were adopting the charter. We had 13 town councils, well, community councils behind the charter at the time when we came to the public inquiry. So that community became the main body at the inquiry, along with Friends of the Earth and the council. Because of the referendum as well, we were trying to, and this is a key point, that the people first said, this must be a done deal, the state's going to just, you know, they've taken up to their decision because they're just going to now go with INEOS and grant the planning permission. And I was kind of careful as a kind of governance lawyer. I wanted to say, well, do you really believe, what do you believe about governance? Could it be that, you know, the referendum happening, you could what space is there to say that the government could go with the people and be against this? They're a marginalised government just as much as this community is in England. Scotland is a marginalised government in the UK. So if you can bring that parallel argument out, that there's a marginalisation that's going on all the time, and the people outside the centre of power are always being taken for granted. And in a way, what's happened in Scotland is the Scottish government has now said, no, we're not. We are with the people, and they have come together against the INEOS and so on. And that's quite an interesting change in power relations. And how can that be approached from England, which is a very different kind of country? And I'm thinking marginalised sort of governance, local authorities, etc. But yesterday, I went with Peter and everybody else to this amazing place. So I'm thinking about what can you do in Nottingham. Now, cultural heritage, as I was saying, was just an idea, but I saw some place just not far from here, 20 miles, a living tradition called Laxton Leet, the Laxton last place in the whole of England, which is a commoning village with open field system going back hundreds of years. Not only that, they have a jury of commoners still that they have. There's still now the farmer we met said there've only now 12 farmers left. So the jury is just at its very limit, and it's about to die off. And I'm thinking this is a living cultural tradition that shouldn't be. Once that history is gone, they've got hundreds of years of records of the courts that meet every November, the courts of the commoners, and to lose that. That tradition, to lose that knowledge that they have gained, would be a tragedy in itself. And how can that be used? And I was kind of thinking, if you do, and I'd love if somebody could do some research and maybe speak to either Tricia or to Brian to find out because if the water is moving down, there's this, and the farmer was saying there's this arterial water that comes out on the land itself, these two springs. Now that water's been clean and it's coming out over these hundreds of years, and if the fracking is somehow maybe interfering with that water, then you have a public trust doctrine that could emerge, and then you would have an interesting case of the Commoners' Court against the State Court, the state saying, we're going to do this fracking, and the last remaining Commoning Court saying, we want an injunction against this water that we have had a stewardship rollover for hundreds of years. Now that would be, I think, an interesting case to try and brings up multiple areas. You could think about the Daily Mail even saying, why would we want our last remaining traditional court to be... So from the left liberals to the sort of conservative, you can see an interesting way of bringing all these things together. And I just want to end there about this idea of remembering the connection to land. Because for me, that's what it's like a Trojan horse of this kind of legal case. It's a legal thing, but the main thing is to try to remember this connection to land, the indigenous people which are in North America. For me, it's how do we begin to remember it? Those farmers on that land remember that connection, and it's trying to remember what they remember, try to connect back, to become indigenous in a way in England, for England to remember its own indigenous memories. Thank you.
Thank you.